system, 23,000 in our BS program, 3,495 in our MS, and 1,526 in our PhD program. Now, of course, one question that will be asked is where will they go? Okay, and that's the reason why we are collaborating very strongly with the DTI so that investments that will require the use of this STEM manpower will be stimulated. Still on the globally competitive STI, well, we included here information on the inclusion of 8 Filipino scientists in the Asian Scientists 100 2018 edition for their significant contributions in scientific research and leadership. So we are proud that out of 100, we have contributed 8. I will treat them to lunch on October 15. Others are, of course, here shown as an example. Our PSI, recent PSI graduate who won in the Breakthrough Junior Challenge because of her very short but very easy to understand video on relativity, and it won for her a prize of 400,000 US dollars. I think 250 of that will go to the school, and 50 will go to the advisor. Okay. Still on accomplishments, our very important contribution, particularly in our SMEs, would be our productivity and efficiency enhancing programs using technology. We have here an enumeration of those programs, the Small Enterprise Technology Upgrading Program, which not only provides different types of advice and services, but also enables them to procure needed hardware and software, which they repay. Now, we have also introduced other important innovations to serve our SMEs, like the One Lab network, which make it easy for them to have their samples of materials and products tested. The One Store network, which is an online ordering system for the products of our SMEs, and the One Expert website, which provides information on experts in different types of technologies. We also do projects that will improve. This is not only the SMEs, but communities. It really varies from place to place, but essentially we introduce technology here on the very basic components like health, okay, water, even the monitoring of weather and rainfall, which is part of disaster risk reduction, and then livelihood and in the area of education. So we deploy the different technologies that we have developed, and I think here one big contribution also is the food innovation centers that we have set up in all regions of the country, which has resulted in a very significant increase in innovative food products that are being actually utilized by our SMEs. So I will not explain in detail the One Lab, the One Store. Okay, we can shift to the One Lab and One Store. Next. Sige na, we can go to the next slide. Okay, the business incubators, which is one way of really stimulating or encouraging new businesses that are technology-based to be set up. And there are 12 business incubators. Well, actually, as of now, there are already 20. The figure of 12 is in 2017. And we expect that this will reach 20 for 2018. Earlier, I was telling of our intervention to communities, and this is through our CES programs, where the components are livelihood, health and nutrition, human resource development, environmental protection, and disaster risk reduction. So in 2017, we have assisted 383 communities. This year, as of the first half, we have already assisted 216 communities. Of course, we have been investing a lot on disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation, and we would like to brag that in terms of our forecast accuracy, we are on the 110-kilometer average track error, which is definitely much smaller than the WMO standard, which is 120. In fact, during the Ompong typhoon, the forecast track error was only 55 kilometers. The outcome 5 still, next slide, includes our resiliency, and we would like to report that we have done the bigger portion of our Pag-asa modernization program, particularly on the acquisition of equipment and in the setting up of stations. So here we have shown the different parts of the countries that are covered either by a Doppler radar, that will be the yellow part, or our high-frequency radars, that will be the green one. Our flood forecasting warning systems, there are 3. This is the orange one, and then we have the wave gliders, and now also the lightning detection system. Speaking of lightning, we would like to mention that we have recently started our R&D on correlating lightning and thunder intensity with the potential rains that will be brought about. So this is in cooperation with Japan. And very recently, maybe you have heard or read that one of our researchers dropped some kind of instrument in the eye of the storm, the last one. Maybe we can move from now the Philippine Seismic Network is another system that we are proud to present here, because PBOLX has been continuing to upgrade its monitoring capability by improving its monitoring systems for volcano, earthquake, and tsunami. I think all of these are very, very timely, although I think we are still lacking, or we still do not have any technology that will predict earthquakes. But in terms of monitoring when this occurs, we have a very good technology already. Now, one of the things that we would like to see is to spread the or to expand our R&D capabilities and capacities, also the opportunities to do research. And we have been introducing this concept of NITS R&D centers, which we are identifying all over the country. So whereas before, I always mention the statistics that out of almost 2,000 degree-granting higher educational institutions over the so many decades, only 85 of them have actually submitted and had approved research grants from DOST. Now we are hoping that there will be more, particularly those coming from the regions. And in this aspect, I would like to mention a very strong collaboration with the Commission on Higher Education, so that we can follow the National Harmonized R&D agenda. Now, governance, of course, is very important, and so we are putting a lot of effort in improving our operations as a system, and of course in monitoring the implementation of the National Harmonized R&D agenda. The passage of the Balik Scientist Law, or Republic Act 11035, and we thank Senator Aquino for his initiative here and for really supporting us up to the last minute during the bicameral conference. And so it was enacted on June 15, 2018. I am proud to say that not all departments have were successful in having laws that they have pushed, adopted. But since we have very good support here, we now have, and I have signed just this morning, the implementing rules and regulations to meet the deadline of 90 days. So, the Balik Scientists Act, of course, you can see in that listing other pending proposed legislation.
Secretary,
yes, sir.
just to interrupt you for a second on this slide, we will be sponsoring the PSTO Act next week.
Which one?
The PSTO.
Wow, okay.
Which I know is very important for our DOST family.
Thank you
so
very
we'll
much.
be sponsoring that probably by Wednesday next week. So if
Thank
you're
you very
here,
much, sir. Thank you very much.
you're very welcome to join us.
Very good news. So the listing here includes that. Actually, we have the Philippine Space Agency, the Nuclear Regulation Agency, and you can see the upgrading of the provincial S&T offices. Now, there are other initiatives that we have. This is in the area of international collaboration. We are very happy to note that there are so many countries that would like to collaborate with us, and we really had to prioritize with which countries so that our limited resources can enable us to really have a meaningful collaboration. We do not want agreements that will remain as simple documents and no action taken. So we are also choosing the kind of collaboration that we are undertaking. So I think that would cover the things that I would like to mention about our programs. And so if we can skip some of the slides and go now to the total proposal amounting to 19.6 billion. This is on the cash-based budget. This is a little less than, since we had 21.2 in 2018, so that means around 1.6 B lower than the previous year. But this is because according to DBM, this is now in a cash-based budget. From what I understand, our Tier 2 activities or programs, which extends on to 2019, are assured, okay, with the needed funding. But unfortunately, the Tier 1, I mean, unfortunately, the Tier 2 proposals have not been considered.
May I see, it's not here in your slides, no, Secretary. What were the main Tier 2 proposals that were not approved?
Well, actually, in terms of new proposals, most of these are really in terms of upgrading our facilities. So both in terms of our research and development institutes and in our regional offices, there are proposals, of course, to improve our laboratories, both to be used for research and for providing services. There are also proposals that involve capital infrastructure like buildings, and others are really very essential expansion budgets, like we want to expand our small enterprise technology upgrading program by 400 million, and also our budgets for the new programs like artificial intelligence and space technology development. To me, those new programs are very, critical.
And they're not budgeted now?
No, particularly the assistance to small enterprises. We have generated so much interest. The queue is long.
This is the setup program.
The setup program.
Right. So the setup program was slashed.
It was not, but the additional budget we are requesting
was not given.
Even.
Right. Magkano ho yung nahingi ho nating dagdag sa setup program?
We have an 800 million approval. We were actually requesting for a 50% increase.
So 1.2 billion.
1.2 billion.
And would you be able to spend this if this were granted to you?
I will.
Yes, you said.
I will ask the program.
Yes, sir, because as mentioned by the Secretary, the queue for the applicants, the MSMEs applying for the program is already going along. Sometimes we're getting some augmentation from the central office.
Magkano ho yung budget niyan for 2017? Sorry, for 2018.
840, the same as for 2019.
And you will be able to utilize what
20.
percentage of the 840 million for 2018?
Actually, now we're almost 80%.
All right. And will you hit
Subscribe.
100% by end of the year? Yes. So pinoproseso na po lahat yan. All right. So a huge component of the decrease, no? Kasi the comparison of cash-based kasi can be misleading sometimes, no, to be honest. Kasi dyan ho, mukhang tumaas po yung budget niyo, pero yung katotohanan naman talaga, bumaba. And that's the same for most agencies, no? So that's one huge chunk, which is 400 million in the setup program. I know may mga capital outlay na, syempre, tapos na, so hindi na kailangan gastusin. There's a huge PSHS, Philippine Science High School, I guess,
But,
building, no?
But PSHS has also new proposals that in Tier 2 that were not considered. I don't know about our Nuclear Research Institute because this is one, there is one particular service that we are already working 24/7, and yet we cannot cope up with the demand for irrigation services because the demand for irrigation services has grown because agricultural products that are exported, most countries' destinations require already this one.
Yes.
Well, maybe it can be, I don't know whether we can blame ourselves for not thinking about it many years ahead of time, but now definitely the facility that we have is not enough, and I must report that we had taken some innovative initiatives, like we have already talked to some private sector because we think it can actually be a business. Okay?
Yes,
So there is a potential investor for Davao. And then we talked to the National Development Corporation, which is the government corporation affiliated with I think DTI. And they passed already a resolution in their board that they will fund a new facility for irrigation.
Right. So may I ask Secretary De La Peña to submit to the committee, considering we have about less than 2 billion that was slashed, plus what you had wanted, no? If we may find out, what are your priorities from those items that were slashed? Is it the setup program? Is it the facility for the PNRI or kung ano man?
Yes.
So kindly submit that to the committee.
Yes, Your Honor.
Number 2, kung mapapasa ho natin yung ibang mga batas na gusto po nating ipasa, no? Si Space Agency, yung nuclear regulation, si PSTO, which of these are funded and which of these are not funded? For example, si PSTO, pag tinaas po natin yung salary grade, will that be funded for 2019?
Di po. We will have to request DBM.
Okay. Okay, because even if you get that passed this year, kung wala hong pondo, maghihintay ka ng isang taon. O pwede ho ba yung kunin sa, what fund is that? MPBF. Or pwede ho ba yung kunin sa MPBF?
Pwede daw po i-request under MPBF.
Okay, so si PSTO can be funded under MPBF. Si Space Agency, ang kailangan may nakaabang na pondo. Kasi kulang ho
meron
ngayon.
po kaming nakaabang for the
program.
R&D.
Oo.
Pero for people that will run the space agency, wala po.
Exactly. So may pondo ho kayo for the program, pero wala kayong program to spin it off into another agency, no? So maybe we can talk about that also.
Opo.
Because if I'm going to endeavor to push for these laws, I'd like to see it implemented next year. Hindi yung maghihintay pa tayo ng isa pang cycle, no? Not promising anything. I'm just saying na as Secretary Boy knows, we're working hard to get this passed before the end of the year. Yung Magna Carta po, will that need additional funding? Kasi that's we're just waiting for the Congress on that, no? Pasado na po yan dito. Yung amendments to the Magna Carta for
I think similar to the PSTO PSTO, we can request.
Get from the MPBF.
Oh.
Okay, so if you can help us, any of the reforms we're pushing for, ano yung potential funding needs nila?
Opo.
No? If you can also submit that to the committee para we can check ho na ma-implement po kaagad itong mga to. Because on my first year here, we passed the Go Negosyo Act, no, August of 2014, but it wasn't included in the budget. So we had to do a lot of negotiations in the BICAM just to make sure the first 100 centers were funded, no? But in our case, at the committee level, sana po mapag-usapan na natin, and we can work with you naman to see which of these laws are likely to get passed before the end of the year.
Yun pong tatlo, Your Honor. For example, yung space, I have already mentioned that we can run the programs because we have set aside a budget for the R&D and even the human resource development, except for the possible salaries of people who will run it. Because at the moment, we are running it utilizing our existing agencies like the ASTI and PSHERD. In the case po of the Nuclear Regulation Act, actually we can already start immediately because we will actually get this from one of the divisions of the Philippine Nuclear Research Institute. They have a Nuclear Regulation Division, so we will separate it. Actually, it can function independently now of the Philippine Nuclear Research Institute, but we have the basic core people who will run it initially. Of course, the PSTO is something that we very, very high priority for us, and we will really request
from MPBF. No?
MPBF.
Opo. So we can work on those. So again, may we have a copy or maybe have a listing of yung tier 2 na hindi ho natuloy. May we be able to see which reforms are, and we can work with you on this, no? The reforms which are most likely to get passed before the end of the year and possible budget requirements. Siyempre, kung meron na naman na and we're just carving out from current agencies, mas maganda kasi walang kailangan na bagong pondo, no? But there will be some, I think, that will need some amount of funding. We can work with you later to see where we can maybe allocate some funds or reallocate certain funds already in your current budget, no? So we'll work with you on that.
Gusto ko lang clarify, Your Honor, that among these pieces of legislation, the case of the Philippine Space Agency, I think in both versions, show that it will be placed under the Office of the President.
Okay. Sige, pag-isipan na kasi kung ganun, the budget has to come from them. It can't come from the OST anymore.
Except the R&D, kasi nakaset aside.
Or we can just add a line about transition. While there's no budget allocated under so-and-so agency, in the meantime, the funds will come from the OST. Just to make sure na hindi ho siya matitigil dahil wala tayong pondo. No?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Alright, so we can work on that. May I know, apart from the big capital outlay, so there are huge capital outlay differences from last year. Understandable naman kung tapos na talaga yung nabuong kung natapos ng infrastructure, no? And then we have the 400 million. No, that's something we didn't get, no? So hindi yan nakasama sa slash because we maintained the 800 million. What else, or what were the largest aspects of the 2018 budget that is not in the 2019 budget? Or yun na po yun, it's mostly capital outlay.
Capital outlay mostly.
Okay, programs, personnel, wala naman hong nabago o na-slash, wala naman ho.
Wala naman.
Alright, so in terms of this year's budget, if we can just look at those things you mentioned, you'd be very happy, Secretary De La Peña.
Lalo na po kung may dagdagan yung aming set-up budget, sana.
Are you, and matagal ko na rin itong sinasabi, you're coordinating naman with DTI regarding the provision of these equipment, no?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes. So, of course, we have the negosyo centers, we have the SSF, we have the setup fund. Lahat po yan dapat nagtutulungan on the ground. Plus the DA pa, if the setup is agri-related, they all help each other on the ground.
Mula po nung nag-set up ang DTI ng mga common service facilities, we have excluded that already in our listing, you know. So the only ones that we are putting up for common use are the innovation centers, which is really more for product development.
Right. Let me go I'm okay na with the budget. No? Upon those submissions, I'm okay with the budgets. But let me just take a step back. Looking back at our outcomes, no, outcome 1 to 7, and this is not just for you, Secretary, no, but having handled agency budgets for the past 4 or 5 years, yung hinahanap talaga natin are, I guess you could say, metrics that indicate where we are on a national level. Because marami tayong napapresent na highlights which are very micro, which is important, and I appreciate it. I think, to be frank, if DTI is able to show one entrepreneur, they were able to go from micro to ASEAN to worldwide level. Importante ho yun, malaking bagay yun. But I think we still need to look at certain metrics on a national level. No? So for example, this could be the number of science and technology personnel per capita, per population. Or it could be how many of these inventions actually get to market. No? So I'm trying to look for these metrics para every year, and I hope next year I'm still handling your budget. No? We can look at these metrics also na masabi ko nating can help us on a year-on-year basis look at the science and technology situation of the Philippines, while also understanding that these specific anecdotes and stories are important. No? So for example, instead of just looking at Ompong, baka you can have like a metric na we were X%, 100% ang forecast for all disasters, no, based on X percentage from the forecast, our ability to forecast properly. That can be one metric that we can track every year. No, if we're looking at the prevalence of science and technology in the country, we can take a look at the number of professionals, which of course means that we also have to work with CHED and DepEd and CHED and the pipeline, no, for science and technology professionals. I'm not looking for it now, but I guess over the next few months or years, we can start to develop what are these metrics na every year pwede nating tingnan kung talagang nagpo-progress tayo. Si DTI, for example, they always look at the metrics on ease of doing business, ease of support for entrepreneurs, and then yung number of investments. Yun palang snapshot, makikita mo na year on year how much better or worse they're doing, no? Sa atin po, do you have key metrics that we're always tracking year on year?
Well, mabuti po nabanggit niyan, Your Honor, kasi I would rather focus on the output indicators. For example, in setup, the improvement in productivity of the SMEs is one major indicator that we have. The employment generated, okay, every year because of the improvement in the operations of our SMEs would be one. Of course, our output in terms of human resources through our scholarships, these are very concrete outputs, whereas before, we are only producing maybe less than 50 PhDs in science and technology. We are now producing so much. Meron lang po akong isang hihinga sa inyo. Ako po kasi nagsimula sa DOST noong pang 1982. At meron pong dalawang indicators dyan na talagang ako'y frustrated na. Yun pong percentage of government R&D expenditures over GDP. Kasi po nakita ko po yan na hindi naman nagbago.
Bumaba, tumaas,
bumaba pa in certain instances. May mga dahil tumaas man ng konti yung numerator, namang denominator po, mas mabilis tumaas. Yung GDP, mabilis tumaas. Yung number of researchers per million population, napakabilis pong tumaas no denominator na population. Yung numerator ay hindi naman ganon.
But Secretary, that's more of our target than yours, no? Because that's a budgetary. Is that just the government budget or total Philippines?
Total po yun.
So hindi lang yung gobyerno?
Hindi po yan sa budget, oo. Ihinga ko lang po sa inyo kasi pagka po yun ang tinignan ko, mawawala na ako ng gana.
Anong porsyento po tayo ngayon? 2? 2? Are we at 2? Point 0.1? And what's healthy? 7? 1 is healthy. So from 0.1 to 1, so times 10. Yung 0.1 po, anong porsyento dyan yung private sector, anong porsyento po yung government?
Nag-shift Well, hindi, kuminsan po nagsisip-sip yan eh. Nung araw, 30% lang ang private sector. There was a time na nag-shift sa private sector pero hindi ko alam kung gaano ka-accurate yung indicator na yon. And then, from time to time, nagkakaroon ng changes.
So that
But
would be-
definitely, medyo may balance.
So that would be one major indicator. Every year we should track that, no?
Okay.
Which is again, percentage of R&D expenditure over GDP. Correct, no? Okay. And this is something I also talked to DTI about. Yung problema rin kasi with just talking about how many entrepreneurs, even though that is important, is you lose sight of how many entrepreneurs there are in the total population, no? Kasi baka nga naka 5,000 tayo na tulungan, 2 million naman yung kailangan nating tulungan, no? So, and again, I'm not saying we can do it now, we can do it as we go on, is maybe kahit a top 3 indicators we can both commit to track every year, and that can be our top line, while we look at specific programs and how many people they help and support, and that can be, like an agency or program target. But just to track SMT in the country, no? I think yung isa pa ho dyan yung number of professionals per population, no? Kasi from there, we can say, sige, si Balik Scientist helps that. Yung tulong sa mga science high schools helps that. Yung scholarship helps that, di ba? So, parang pwede mo rin siyang you can look at all of our programs and output based on those indicators and what actually helps the indicator, what does not help the indicator, para lang ho every year, we have a micro or we have a specific case here, and we also have that nationwide or top line tracking that we can do.
For example, in the number of researchers involved, actually, when we surveyed the private sector portion, in the case of the government expenditures and number of researchers, we do the actual survey ourselves, DOST. But then when we do the survey for the industry or the private sector, we have to write it on to the industry survey of the Philippine Statistics Agency. So we have they have their own methodology, and I don't know whether we are capturing exactly because this is done through sampling. Okay. Now, what I am inspired to do is to track the number, for example, of government, of researchers in the academe who are involved in R&D, although it may be an indicator also for CHED, but I think because of the grants that we are giving, we can use it also as an indicator.
Yes. In fact, Secretary, kunyari if you want, kasi with those types of indicators, kasi we're forced to think big, no? Kunyari, every year we want to increase the number of professionals, SMT professionals in the workforce. Now, SUCs natin, libre na yung tuition. So now we look at, sige, maybe we can talk to the SUCs or CHED, or kung meron mang new allocation for funding for the SUCs, you can say, ang pondohan nyo yung mga engineering department, yung mga sciences, hard sciences, no? Because if we fund the expansion of those courses, we're actually funding more capacity for graduates who, of course, will eventually be part of the pipeline for increased SMT professionals in the population. So, kumbaga, you can go back to us and say, sige, we have this grand plan to get to X% in 5 years, so X%, lahat ng, kunyari lang to baka tinitweet na to na sarado na, hindi, kunyari lang ho, sasabihin natin, sige, CHED, every year meron tayong increase in budgets for certain schools na may center of excellence sa courses na ito, ang pondohan natin, damihan yung slots or damihan yung mga courses na may purpose na ganyan, no? And we can work on it together rather than right now na generic yung ginagawa nating increases, no? They're just increases in general or they're scholarships in general. We can be more purposive if that goal is clear, no? And we can work together on this. Again, it's a budget item, it's an agency to agency item. We can see how we can move the needle, no? Because at the end of the day, if we're able to increase the that ratio, if we're able to increase the earlier, no, we talked about the expenditure per GNP or GDP. These are items which, kumbaga siya, macro level siya na pwede nating we can really have goals towards while still maintaining a lot of these programs, which of course help specific individuals and specific enterprises. No?
And come up with something like between 5 to 7 of the
Indicators,
indicators, and maybe we can discuss later kung alin dun talaga ang parang priority in terms of
I think that would be good for everyone, no? And then,
yes.
anyway, that matches everything. I think each of these outcomes naman do have an indicator behind it, and it doesn't have to be 5 to 7. It can be 1 to 3, or even, you know, just the major ones that we can just track every year. Something on disaster resiliency, something on support for R&D, something on number of professionals, probably, no? And, you know,
Kaya ko po nasabi yung 5, we have basically 5 basic mandates. The R&D, there can be a measurement for that.
yes.
The transfer of technology, which are the licensing and yung mga ganon. Of course, the productivity improvement for SMEs, that will be another sector. The human resources, and maybe the clientele that we have for our laboratories, yung mga ganon.
And the disaster resiliency.
Oo.
Sige, we can work on that moving forward. But in the meantime, I'm quite happy with everything I've seen. Pending all of those discussions, no, and submissions, let me just see if there are other senators who are interested to join us. Okay, looks like it's an early day for everybody. No other senator has indicated their intention to interpolate today. So with that, we would like to the budget of the DOST and its attached agencies, namely PCAARRD, PCHRD, PCIERD, ASTI, FNRI, FPRDI, ITDI, MIRDC, PNRI, PTRI, Pag-asa, FIVOX, Philippine Science High School, SEI, STII, TAPI, TRC, NAST, and NRCP are deemed submitted for approval to the plenary, taking into consideration the discussions today and all of the submissions required from the Secretary and the DOST made today in the subcommittee hearing. Thank you very much, Secretary De La Peña.
Thank you very much, Your Honor.
Salamat po. We adjourn this Committee on Finance hearing. Salamat po.